about these girls from different parts of the town that will help us to understand what it was like starting from first grade to 8th grade. At that time, there were only 4 schools in the area, and each school had 8 grades. The same for me, which was down here at Colrain Central, and Debbie had, where'd you go? Grisville?
Central.
We all of us went to Colrain Central School.
First grade?
Yes.
My mother went
No,
to the grade.
Yes.
I was the only girl in my class for 4 grades.
I know, but I'm so much younger than you. I only went to Colrain Central School.
We did too.
And all them did
First
too.
grade through 8th, Colrain Central.
Cause you went to Colrain Center School, which was down there.
Yeah.
Right.
See, so that's different.
Oh, you went to the new school?
That's right.
Oh, well, I
We
don't
all
know
went to the
anything
new
about
school.
the new school.
Well, we know all about it.
All right, so that's where I was gonna start with me going to down there at the Colrain Central. No,
Center.
Center School. And I was the only girl in my class from grades 1 through 4, and then 5th and 8th were on the other side. And then at the 5th grade, the schools consolidated. Each of these schools had only 8 grades. Colrain, Grisville, Foundry Village, and
Elm Grove.
South School.
South School, right. So I don't know what that year was that happened. But then they put 2 grades in each of those schools. So I was still here at 5th grade. 6th grade, I went over to Foundry Village School for my 6th grade. And then for 7th and 8th, I came back to Colrain. And at the last half of the school year, we moved from the Colrain Central School to Colrain Center School, right?
The other way around.
Other way around.
Center school to
Center
Central.
School over to Central School. That would have been, as you know, at the new school. And I finished my 8th grade over there. And that was fine.
So
Then I
how
went
big
off
was,
to
how
what?
big was the class? I'm just curious. Like when you were in first grade as the only girl, how many boys were there?
3.
Oh, wow.
There was 4 of us from grades 1 through 4.
So which one did you like?
What school were you going to, Joan, when you had 4 people in the class?
Pardon me?
This isn't question.
Center school.
Central school?
I didn't like any of them because they
Still doing that.
put my hair in the inkwell. And so that's a little bit of history about the schools. And that's so long ago now that it's hard to remember exactly what it was like. But, I mean, we didn't know any different at that time. And we weren't going to high school yet. So we didn't know anything about that. And for the most part, I don't know about how students got to school if they lived out and about, not you guys, but in my day, they had somebody in each region would come around and pick up the school kids for their receptive classes before it was consolidated into 2 grades in the school. So that's all I know about that, or that I can remember. And when we finished 8th grade, and we were gonna think about going to high school, the bus would be parked, probably your father was driver, at the Common, and satellite buses from all over each place would come and deposit the students onto that bus, and away we'd go to Arms Academy. So that was starting high school. And so you girls are next as far as age goes. So what happened to you from 1st to 5th grade or whatever?
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We basically are gonna talk about school, but mostly each individual town that we grew up in, the Villes. So I'm talking about Adamsville. And I went to Colrain Central School for first grade with Elaine, and prior to going to school and growing up in Adamsville, there was one other little girl there, Terry Aiken. So adventures in Adamsville were pretty limited, but we found plenty to do. When I would say to my mother, I'm gonna go down and play with Terry, and we're 5. Okay, well, what time will you be home? And I would proceed to go down the road to the Aiken farm, the Brown farm. We, as girls, would go back and forth to each other's houses using the river and skipping on all the rocks, low water. No one worried that we were gonna drown, or I'm sure they cared, but they didn't worry till maybe dark. There were farms there, so we did the typical farm, played in the hay and did that. And then as we got older, the bus rides to school were something to talk about. There was always something going on. Boys would misbehave. And my biggest memory, I think, of leaving Adamsville to go to somewhere was we'd go to Foundry Village to trick or treat. Our mothers would bring us there because we didn't have many houses to trick or treat, but if we went to Foundry Village, we could do that whole loop. But there was one problem, the covered bridge. And the boys would be up in the covered bridge with rotten tomatoes in the rafters. And you had to run the gauntlet to get through the covered bridge without getting peppered too bad. And there were a lot of kids in Foundry Village, so that made growing up there, just special. And the other thing that I thought of, I think was the most important thing that these girls know too. When we grew up and you made your own entertainment and you played outside and you pretended. And I said the other day to one of my grandsons, do you know what it is to pretend? And he goes, no, what is that? And I said, it's when you have to make believe if you're playing. Well, I did that when I was little. Now he didn't because he's 21, so he's grown up with TV and all other stuff. So I think that probably what formed most of us girls in our memories is that pretending and creating your memories and adventures in living in a very small town like Adamsville. You go now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, we were in the same grade, and,
You were in Colrain Center right here.
yeah, yes, I lived right in Colrain. I grew up right in Colrain Center, right behind Hartnett's, which it used to be Frank Calls. And I had the best of both worlds because my grandparents lived on the state line farm, and I lived in the town. And it was wonderful. We had the library, we had the general store.
Where was
We
the
had-
general store?
It's gone now. It's where the Veterans Memorial is, right?
Oh.
Yeah. And we had the post office right there.
The inn.
Oh, yes, yes. When we were preteens,
Could you
we-
speak a little louder?
Okay.
I can't hear.
I'm sorry. When we were preteens or in our teens, there's a lot of kids in town back then. And we only got like 3 channels on TV. So we would all tell our parents that we're going up to the library to study on Friday night. But we'd meet on the store, on the general store steps. And we'd watch the live entertainment from the Colrain Inn. And
What sort of entertainment was it?
drunks falling down the steps, cops
Fist
fights, I mean, you name it. Yep. You have to have HBO now to see that stuff. But no, and we had swimming lessons up across from Brigham's down in the river. And in town, we had to be home by the time the street lights came on. But it was great growing up here. It really was. A lot of history too. That's how come. Oh, and Halloween's, talking about that. And I think Jones, that age, when you were young, it was the same thing.
Oh, yes.
The kids would take everything off of porches
Everywhere.
Yeah, and put them on the common. But the guys, when I was growing up one year, they did something different. Do you remember Judy Miller?
Yeah.
They took her black bra off the clothesline and they strung it up on the flagpole. And then
You mean Dot Miller,
her daughter.
her daughter Judy, okay.
And then one Halloween, at the guys at the beginning of the bridge, they got a bunch of slabs and they had found a detour sign. So they blocked off the bridge with a
I remember
detour
that.
sign. You remember it?
I remember that.
It had rained. Cars went down Buckwheat Flat, down River Street, and then
Oh,
down
no,
Buckwheat
no.
Flat. A couple of them got stuck. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, I remember.
I was gone by then.
And I remember on the Shattuckville end of it, we heard it as those terrible kids in Colrain Center.
But you know, growing up, of course, it's quite a big town, but we knew everybody. It's like nobody moved. It was, we knew everybody and everybody knew us. I mean, it was like the neighborhood watch. And there had to be like 30 kids riding bikes, walking. I mean, the baby boomers, you know? And it was just wonderful. And we had the dock right in town. We'd go, when we got older, we'd go shooting rats at the dump.
Oh, yes.
And one time, we were there, my brother stepped on a nail. Your father was there. And he said, oh, hop in the truck. Took him over, gave him a tetanus shot, watched
Brought
the
her back to
puncture,
shoot rats.
and started shooting some more. Yeah. So, no, it was a good country town. Good country town.
Yeah. It was. That's why I came back.
Me too.
All right, well, it's your turn, Debbie.
My turn.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I grew
She's
up in the
older than-
Shattuckville part of Colrain. And we had the lower road, which is 112, and the Iron Bridge was there at that time. So you could go across the Iron Bridge up to Call Road, which was the other part. And we had lots of kids. Every family had between 4 and 7 children. And there were probably 7 families. So there were lots of kids. And one of the things I remember very early on, I was probably 6, 7, 8 years old, was in the winter we had what we called the frog pond that would freeze over, and it was wonderful ice skating. And the older boys would go down and shovel it off and build a fire. And then all of us younger kids, like 6, 7, and 8, would walk from our houses. And we used to walk from my house where I was living then. It was probably a little over a half a mile to walk down to skate. And you'd skate all day, and when you walked home, you felt like the skates were still on your feet. It was the weirdest feeling. And you were usually freezing cold by then. And we had one of the neighborhood dogs, was a black and white mutt, and he would escort everybody home. He would walk you home, and then he would go back to the frog pond.
Mhm.
Then the next people that left, he'd walk them home.
You
He'd
talking
come back
about
to the frog
Pluto?
pond. My father one day,
You
said-
talking about Pluto?
no, Pierre's dog.
Oh, Bozo.
And my father said, oh, they're crying. What'd that dog do to them? And my mother said, the dog didn't do anything. They froze their feet, and he's escorting them home.
Oh, how cute.
But I do remember going home many times crying because my feet were frozen. But there always was a fire. The older boys would, build the fire.
You're coming down the road.
And it was really, there were a lot of hills. You could go sliding, We had the old skis with the harness that just
Oh,
went
yes.
over your foot. You couldn't turn. You just had to go straight. And hopefully it was a long enough hill that you didn't go into the trees. But a few times we crashed into the trees. But and then walking to school, that was not a good memory because I had to walk from where we lived in Shattuckville on Call Road to Grisaville to catch the bus. And it was 1 mile. And they didn't stop school if it snowed. You still went to school if it snowed. So I remember walking in knee-deep snow out to Grisaville. And there were these 2 wonderful women, my aunt Evelyn Karen and Bernice Karen, who would invite us in to get warm while we waited for the bus because it was pretty nasty.
Yeah.
pretty nasty walking back then. And you didn't wear, you wore snow pants, but you had to take them off immediately when you got to school. There was something about
Yeah.
girls wearing
Had to wear
pants.
Oh, you couldn't wear pants, no?
You couldn't wear
No,
pants, and
no.
snow pants were pants, even
Yeah.
though it was cold and
Yeah.
snowy. It just didn't make any sense.
We
but-
did have that in common, all of us.
Yeah.
I would take my snow pants off at the bottom of the driveway and put them in the mailbox to get on the bus without them on. And everybody's got a little story about how they got their snow pants before they.
But it just made no, to me, even as a kid, it made no sense that boys could wear pants, but we couldn't wear snow pants. And my walk was a very cold walk
I
out
bet.
to the bus,
Yeah.
Boy, I bet.
out to the bus. So,
When did the bus start to pick you up? At Fish Lanes or?
no, this is when we lived in the old house in the middle of Call Road.
Okay.
We walked out to Grisaville. Then we moved down to the
Oh, okay.
other house, which was on toward Fish Lines end of Call Road. And then we just had to walk down the hill. That was a piece of cake, but that was when I was 12, so from 6 to 12,
Is that where the old bridge
I froze.
was that is
Right.
not there now?
Right.
Now, did you, where was the was that the Fox and Goose?
Fox and Goose Tavern
Okay.
was
Okay.
the original
Okay.
house.
Yeah.
And then we moved when I was 12 down to the newer house. So, but it was always lots of kids in the neighborhood. And the interesting thing as an adult now when I look back, we never had disagreements where the
Right.
parents got involved. It was always the kids, and the parents stayed out of it. The kids settled any disagreement they had. And we had really had very few disagreements. You know, sometimes it would be the boys versus the girls. That would be the
We
the
took
problem.
35 kids growing up in our neighborhood.
how many?
35.
35, yeah. And we really managed to all get
Never
along.
had
And
no
one of the
problem.
things that I remember that was the most sort of an event that we did every year was we would walk up to the fire tower in Shelburne and go up Patton Hill Road and walk.
Oh,
And it would take us all day.
yeah.
But we would go to Fish Line store, and this was a very special thing because if you didn't have much money, you bought penny candy at Fish Line store. You couldn't even buy a candy bar because those were expensive. But I wanted the snowflake, what are they, snowball cupcakes by Hostess. White with the coconut on them. That was what I craved. So that was what I would get for our hike. I'd get 15 cents and I would go down and buy that snowball cupcake thing. And when we'd have lunch on our hike, I would have this cupcake that I looked forward to all summer long. It sounds ridiculous now, but you know, it was either penny candy or nothing.
The Fish Lines was where?
Fish Lines was right on Route 112. It was sort of a meat market grocery store, and they had a candy.
Is that
Cabinet.
at Griswoldville?
No,
Shattuckville.
Shattuckville. Yeah.
The building is still there, Peggy.
Yeah.
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 And Mrs. Fishline ran the store with her husband. He was the meat cutter. And on Halloween, she would let you pick out a full-size candy bar from the glass case of candy. And we would start in early September, standing in front of the case trying to figure out what candy bar we were gonna pick when Halloween came. And I had her as a patient when she was in her 90s. And I told her about how special Halloween was because she'd let us take this, you know, full-size candy bar. She said, I never knew that. I said, oh yeah, Halloween was like
That was a big deal.
big
Wow,
deal,
that's
big
impressive.
deal. Yeah, to get a full-size candy bar.
But she let you pick what you wanted.
Oh yeah, you could pick whatever you wanted. And we would start really in September, figuring out what we were gonna pick. And it would change, you know, 4 or 5 times, but we'd all stand in front of the case and on Halloween, you got to pick.
Definitely was a
What you
simpler
wanted.
time.
Yeah, very simpler time, much simpler time, definitely.
I'll add, I grew up also in Shattuckville, I omitted that, because my aunt and grandmother took care of me, so my parents worked at the mill, 2 to 10 and 3 to 11. And so Debbie's story about the frog pond and skating, yes, freeze your, those white leather skates, oh my God. But all the kids watched out, I remember this part, And if it got dark, someone would walk you home. Someone would walk me up John Eileen's stairs,
Yep.
you know, because that's where I was staying or at my grandparents'. So I did have some of your experiences, and Fish Lines was amazing. That we could go on. That could be a whole program in itself of everyone's memories of Fish Lines. Betty, are you
I
next?
have one quick story about fish lines. I was an adult at the time, and I was in there with my son, who was about 3. And there was a guy in there who was referred to as Dirty Joe, because he never bathed, and he smelled terrible. So we go in there, and the whole store is reeking. And Mrs. Fishline is so apologetic. She goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but he's really our good customer. You know, he's in buying meat." And I said, "That's okay, Irene." And my Andrew's saying, "Mom, what smells so bad? What smells so bad?" I said, "Andy, be quiet, be quiet." He would not be quiet. "What smells terrible? Oh, it smells terrible." I said, "Andy, be quiet." Finally, I said, "Mrs. Fishline, I'll come back and shop. I can't shop with him." So we go outside, and I'm standing on the step. And I looked at him and I thought, well, this is a little teaching moment. I said, "Well, Andy, do you know what that smell was?" And he goes, "Oh, it was terrible." I said, "It's because that man never takes a shower. He's very dirty, he doesn't shower. That's why it smells like that." His eyes got really big. He said, "He smells?" And I said, "Yes, that's how you smell if you don't take a shower." And I never had a problem with that kid, never again, taking a shower. If anything, he took too many showers too long.
Sarah? Well, I guess I am older than you.
You are.
Betty and I were classmates. We rode the bus. I was from Shearer Road in East Colrain, which if you know Colrain, it's right, my road is right on the Shelburne-Colrain line. And you go a little further and it's a green field. We're 5 miles from Big Y, which is great. End of a dead-end road, but 5 miles to the grocery store. So I was the neighborhood gang with my cousins. There were only 2 families on our road. And most of my church and scouts and choir was in Greenfield, because it's where my dad was from. But basically, we would walk out to the bus, it's about half a mile, out to the junction of Van Nuys and East Colrain Road. And then we'd ride the bus, and we rarely had snow days. We had Howard Gooley as a bus driver, as Betty will attest.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd be going the top of Scranton's Hill drifts. He says, "Oh, we can make it." You know, he's like, because sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't. But basically, I remember having sledding parties with our choir at church, you know, because we were the neighborhood gang. But we would put signs, handmade signs, "Please don't sand the road, don't sand the road," because it would ruin our runner sledge, you know, if they put sand on our road. And I can just imagine, that was in the days, no SUVs. It was station wagons with chains and cinder blocks in the back. Who remembers those?
Yeah.
But most of my memories are from school, riding the bus with Betty, 1st grade to 12th grade. And then my highlight in 2nd grade, and I even have a picture of our 2nd grade class, we will show later. But this is me and my famous dress that I had in 2nd grade, a little green dress. The thing was that it had a petticoat that had an inner tube in the petticoat that would fluff out your dress. And I was in 2nd grade and it was leaking, so I was like kind of going blowing it up because I was ruining my outfit, you know. It was just like, it was my look and I had to fix it. So that was one thing. Another thing from 2nd grade, Mrs. Miller, our teacher, she wrote on my report card, "I praise Sarah and I scold Sarah. I get the same response, nothing." So I was like a Kuna Matata before it was popular. Whatever. Other things that I remember, I brought more show and tell. Who remembers playing alleys?
Oh, we all
Or
do.
marble.
Yep.
Oh, and there it is. The teacher will get it. That one's Joan. But anyway, we used to put a little depression in the ground and we'd shoot them, and then you'd just get them, and whoever got them all in at once with the last shot, like pool, you won the marbles. And I think this is my grandfather's or great grandfather's leather. We had little cloth bags if we were lucky. And then I also remember square dancing in Memorial Hall with Johnny Walker.
Yes.
Oh Johnny, oh Johnny, oh, who danced to that tune? Okay, everybody remember that? And then we also took waltz lessons, and I remember Andy Fairbanks and I were dancing, and we saw the judges, and we did some little fluty-doo footwork, and then we won the classic Colrain prize, which was a chocolate bar, a big chocolate bar. But I remember all the boys on one side, all the girls on the other, and you just kind of prayed that you wouldn't get the kid who kind of smelled like the guy who was in the
Or you
store.
wouldn't be the only
The one
one
left.
that's left.
Exactly.
Please pick me.
And another story, the third grade story, was when Ruby Root, not my favorite teacher, I wasn't good at math, and you had these wooden rulers, so I was bored and I'm gnawing on them, you know, like a chipmunk, and she says, I'm gonna tell your mother. And it's like, I was in Kresge's in Greenfield once, the store, and my mother was in there and Ruby Root was in there. I dove and hid under one of the displays where they had the little curtains, because I was just sure that she was going to tell my mother that I chewed on the ruler. But basically, you know, and then I found in cursive, I found this in the archives, I think this was 4th grade, Lyndall Dennison. And she writes, you read too much. It was a B in presentation, but an A in content. But the thing is, I have beautiful cursive writing, which is much better than my writing now, which sadly, nobody does cursive now in school, which I think is a shame.
It is.
And the last thing I will say, that when I lived on the Cape, working at a small museum at one time, the executive director of the Thornton Burgess Society said to me, she'd always refer to Sarah as Little House in Colrain, like it was Little House on the Prairie, like we lived this kind of bucolic Laura Ingalls Wilder life. And she wasn't far off, because we were that way. So that's kind of my early memories of Colrain. So, anybody wants to see 2nd grade from 2nd to 3rd?
I'm in the picture.
Yeah, Betty's here. We know everyone.
Well, I lived in East Colrain, but way before you got to Sarah's house. I was not, just at the bottom of West Leiden Road, in a farmhouse, and I still live in the same farmhouse I grew up. Yeah, Sarah lives in the same house too. So I still live in the same farmhouse that I grew up in, and my walk to the mailbox was only 1/4 of a mile, but my father had built this little shack so that my sister and I wouldn't have, if it was raining or snowing, we wouldn't have to stand out in the rain or the snow. And I remember one day leaving my rubbers in that little shack, because I didn't want to wear rubbers to school. Nobody else wore rubbers to
I did
school.
my boots in our waiting shed.
And I think my father found those rubbers, and I probably wore them every day after that. But so I grew up on a farm, and some of my best memories are going out in the pasture to get the cows, and Sandy Goodell, who was another Colrain girl, she'd be over at my house, and we'd go to get the cows to bring them in for milking, and we would look for the freshest, warmest cow plop. And we would, with our bare feet, we would step in it and let that cow plop come right up through our toes. So I always say that, whoops, that's why my feet are so big. But, and then I remember going to the milk house, because we had Raymond Rosenberg, who used to live in Colrain. He was the man who came and picked up our milk. And every once in a while, he'd bring those little cartons of chocolate milk. And that was such a treat. And so one day I went up there and I asked him if I could have a chocolate milk. I wasn't allowed to go to the barn for quite a while after that, because you didn't ask for the chocolate milk. If he wanted to offer it to you, that was okay, but you weren't supposed to ask. So, and then over at Colrain School, we had the playground. We had the hot metal slide that you would slide down, and there was a puddle, usually a puddle at the bottom. And the merry-go-round that you took your life in your hands when you ran around the merry-go-round and then jumped on. And then there was also the jungle gym. And thank heavens for petty pants, which were these little,
Pantaloons.
like they weren't bloomery, but we put them under our skirts, cause that was the only thing that saved us from all the boys at the on the ground when we were up on the jungle gym, so. It was great growing up here. My kids, of course, grew up on the same farm I did, and they hated it because we're in the boonies, oh. But I never thought about being in the boonies when I was little.
I will say though, remember Halloween, Betty couldn't go trick-or-treating because her parents said it was begging. So even though when I went trick-or-treating, we had to drive everywhere, I'd lose my sneaker in Schneider's flower bed. But we considered it a good haul if we got an old glass mayonnaise jar full of candy. That was like a haul. And I'd always share some
And
with
she'd
Betty.
share some with me because I wasn't allowed to go trick-or-treating. So.
I'd like to share one real fond memory of Colrain Center. And I think I was probably about 10 or 11. And the minister of the Congregational Church, the parsonage was right up there by Quinn's.
Right.
And the common, there was there was the regular common, and then there was a triangle common, which had a tree on it too. And the trees on the common were all decorated for Christmas. Everybody's house along here. And the minister and Ed Parsons, you remember Ed Parsons? No? Anyway, he did the electrical stuff. And in the church, and I think for 2 or 3 years, the lights would come on like the Baptist church.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they had the lights come on, and they had Christmas carols playing. Do you remember that? And people, of course it got dark early, and people would just walk around the town visiting, and everything. You didn't have the traffic you've got now. And it was like a winter wonderland, truly it was, yeah.
How nice.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
What were you in school at that point? High school or still?
You were at 10, you were
I was
probably
great.
like
I was
fifth,
six,
fifth
yeah,
grade,
yeah,
fifth or
yeah,
sixth.
yeah, yeah. But it was so pretty, so quaint.
All right, so then as you girls got older and you went on to high school, there must have been a few escapades there. Maria?
They went to Arms.
We went to-
We were the first
We went-
freshman class at
We
Mohawk.
went 2 years to Arms, and then we had to go to Mohawk.
Oh, awful.
It was. I loved Arms Academy. I did not like Mohawk.
Well, they took
All the
schools,
rivals,
because
yeah.
we were rivals in sports and everything, the 9 towns, and decided to just put us all together.
And the teachers from the different towns, so then you knew there was favoritism.
Yeah.
And then you had the, 7th grade, and before
No,
they,
we had 17th grade in Colrain.
no,
But
but I
the
mean,
seventh
when
graders were there.
were there when we went to Mohawk, they hadn't finished the cafeteria, but they opened it. You had to eat your lunch in the library, which was carpeted, and those little kids were having food fights. I mean,
I don't remember that.
I
The
do.
little kids.
There was a zoo. You walk down the hallway in there. It's wild.
They're all about that tall.
Yeah.
Sarah and I were in the last 8th grade that graduated from Colrain Central School. We had our graduation at Memorial Hall. I remember I had to do a speech, and Mrs. Pike, I probably had a croaky voice, and Mrs. Pike, she probably was only smiling at me, but I felt like she was laughing at me, and that would mortify me.
I remember 8th grade, the big thing for us was like Andy Fairbanks' father was a Cott soda distributor, so we had bottled soda at our graduation party. That was like living a dream.
That's right.
We'd arrived.
Well, my class, when I left here at 8th grade, was the first class to graduate from the newer school at Memorial Hall. So that was my 8th grade.
Yeah, see, so we have a connection.
And we all
That's
graduated.
first and last.
Graduation was at the memorial.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
That's when you could park anywhere too.
right.
I think you should tell your story, Mom, of the bully at the Grange school.
Tell, which one?
The bully at the Grange school threw your lunch in the river, and what happened?
I can't hear
She
you.
can't hear you.
Jeez. You want me to tell the story?
Yeah, why don't you?
I'll tell the story.
What are you telling?
The one about Walt Jaguar.
Oh, about Walter Garrett, oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, she's 98 now, so she was in first grade. And she was an
He was in
only
fifth grade.
child. So she comes down to the school, and back then, if you went to reform school because you were misbehaving and a juvenile delinquent, you would go to reform school, but then they'd put you right back in the same school you were
Right back
in,
the school again. You had
in the
to go
same
Back
class.
to the same grade.
So this kid was probably, you know, the 12 or 13 in the school that was up to 6th grade. And he was basically a bully. So
He was
he
one
decides my mother's gonna be his victim. So he takes her lunch and throws it in the river. So back then, all the kids in Grisaville would go home for lunch. And then they would come back
And they
to
had
the
a
school and play baseball. The boys would play baseball in the field. So this day they're coming back from having lunch and everybody's kind of gathered around Paul Road, looking over into the river, you know, what's going
The
on.
kids came up and
Yeah.
got their lunch too.
Let me
That's
tell,
why he was there having his lunch supposedly.
yeah. So their kids say, you know, what's happening, what's going on here? And somebody says, oh, well, he threw Marion's lunch in the river. So this very small kid says, go get her lunch to the bully. And he's big tall guy and he says, who's gonna make me? And Walt says, I am. And
Well,
my
he
mother's
has to
standing there and
follow
she's
the
like,
other
whoa, this is, well, the bully goes in the river and gets the lunch and then throws it on the ground in front of my mother. So the bully kind of walks away. And my mother says, well, I think I've got a friend here in this Walt. She didn't really know Walt. She wasn't related to Walt. But every time the bully would come around her after that, she would go over by first base because Walt was a very
I
good
always wanted to play ball.
baseball player. So she would go over by first base and the bully would say, oh, you're cozying up to your relative, huh? My mother said, I never told him he wasn't my
Walt didn't know the difference.
relative.
He didn't pay any attention to me at all. But that Roy knew it. And
So
he
who's the bully?
reminded
The bully.
me about it. And I was hanging around. And I felt like saying, yeah, you big bully, but you don't dare touch me when he's
When this little short kid's
hanging
around Walt.
First base.
And she never told Walt's children when he was alive
Oh,
about that. I said, you really should have. He
I
would
know
have,
it.
he would have loved to hear that.
He
The
was
kids
so
would have
cute.
loved to hear that, you know, that he was a protector against bullies back then.
And my other favorite person was Joel Lively.
Yeah.
Oh, he was a sweetheart.
Oh, my
Good
uncle.
person, just
Yeah.
born that
My
way.
brother,
Yeah. Tell him why you thought he was nice.
What?
Tell him why he was nice.
Oh, well, when I was in the second grade, he was in the first grade. And of course, in the spring of the year, we always played alleys. That was
Alleys.
Yeah.
a couple of weeks of playing alleys, and then, it was over with. So Gerald and I brought our lunch because he lived on the north end of Griswold, and I lived 8/10 of a mile down Colrain from the school. So we all just play together and eat our lunch because we were the only little kids. The other ones that brought were the older kids, the Shadfield kids. So anyway, this day I go to school with a whole bag. I got a bag of alleys. And I went to school with my bag of alleys, and Gerald had his bag of alleys, and we played alleys. Well, of course, I wasn't a very good alley player, I guess, because I lost every one of them to Gerald. So we got our, I figured I had to give them to him. I, didn't expect he was going to give them back to me. He wanted them fair and square. So then he said, I'm going to give you back your alleys. I said, you are? Yeah. And he had 2 extra big ones
Boulders.
that were special in his bag. Well, I didn't have any big ones. And he said, and maybe I'm gonna give you one of the big ones too. I nearly fainted. I thought, he'd give me, I actually won them all, and he gave them all back to me. And I said something to one of the older people, one of the libraries. Yeah, they said, that sounds like Gerald. That was Gerald.
Yeah, then your father said though, you went home and told your father
Oh,
that,
why, when I told him that, my father said, yeah? He said, well, you better not take those valleys to school again, because if you lose them again to somebody other than Gerald, he said, that little lively boy's here, he's different. The rest of them aren't gonna give him back to you. So I never took my alleys back to school again. Just good people.
Dave, you got anything to add to this melee?
Me?
Yeah, you.
No, I went to grammar school in Greenfield,
Oh.
Federal Street.
yeah,
My dad went there.
I got a marble story. It took place on Church Street. I won't say who the family was, but Gail. She went out to play marbles like they did, and she played against a girl who was her age. Gail won her marbles. So the brother came out, and he said he's gonna play Gail. And Gail said, okay, and Gail won his marbles. And he went in the house, he was mad, and then the older brother the oldest, came out and said, you know, you took his marbles. Yeah, I won him, she said. He's there. Well, play me then. She said, okay. She won his marbles. She was good at all that. Well, he went in the house, and I mean, you're talking 2, 3, 2, 4, probably 6 years older than Gail, right? The oldest one. The mother came out and made Gail give them
their
Marbles back?
You asked Gail about it, yeah?
She was always a good athlete.
Yeah.
Played softball.
You know who that was?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It was fun growing up in this
Yeah.
area, I'll tell
We
you.
really
There was
didn't
a
have
lot of-
anybody, bullies in our classes. We had Jimmy Colligan who dressed up as a woman, but other than that, and then he had to go to detention because he shot somebody's cow.
Oh,
He was from over Nelson Roadway.
I know what Cogan's, Patty Cogan was
Yeah.
from Martha's Vineyard. Yeah, wasn't she, Debbie?
yeah.
Well, what about when you got to high school? Oh, well, I'm thinking of Mr. Fruit and his chemistry class and all of that, but you didn't go there.
We
They
went to
did.
Arms for
Yeah.
2 years.
in Mohawk.
He was gone by the,
Oh,
I think he just left by the,
okay,
but we did have Mrs. Haller, loved her.
yeah,
A lot of them had our parents
yes.
when they went to school.
Miss Chase and
Miss
Mrs. Allen.
Chase, yeah.
I do remember when, in Earth Science, when
What
they were
was
so mean
Mrs.
to Mr.
Haller's
Gifford,
maiden
remember
name?
that? They made him cry.
I didn't have her.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
You mean Isabel?
Yeah.
Isabel
Isabel.
Haller,
I had Isabel
yes.
Helen
If you
for
I
ask
had
anyone
Miss
that went to
ninth
Arms
grade.
Academy,
they remember
They-
her.
she probably was 99% everyone's favorite teacher.
Who's
Yeah.
this?
Mrs. Haller.
Oh, yeah,
Isabel Haller,
You can
yeah.
talk, we have our class reunions, you know, we get together, talk about high school. Mrs. Haller at Arms, she just affected every single student that
And
she taught.
She was a top teacher too.
Yeah.
how about Mrs.
English.
Weatherby, did you have her?
No,
She was
I
in the
did.
office,
Did you? I
yeah.
didn't, no.
You know what
I had her
happened
for
to me
French.
when I was in high school?
Hmm?
Oh, I loved high school. I went to Arms Academy. Why, I was in 7th heaven. I
I-
loved everything about it.
I did too. I
The,
did too.
the social part of it, the academics.
Yeah.
Why, I thought I was in heaven. So I used to get on the bus and ride down every day, and we had all kinds of. I was shy as a young person. I was very shy, but I gradually made friends, and everything was going fine, and I got into into the social life, the Grange Hall, the people used in the Grange was very active when the years I was in high school. That was from 1939 on. And just about anybody that was anybody belonged to the Grange. I don't know what the big attraction was, but everybody belonged to the Grange. So they used to have fundraising activities. So they'd come up with the idea that they would have square dances. And it wasn't the Western one, it was the Eastern style, the old-fashioned Eastern style square dancing. And all the Granges got together, like Ashfield, Shelburne, Buckler, all of them, Colrain, got together and they had to have them on different nights and stagger them to have the dance. But boy, when we got rid of that, it was mostly the Grangers that were starting it. But boy, when those teenagers got wind of that dance, boy, they started going. Well, they were crowded. And oh, was that fun. I'm telling you, no more but fun than an Eastern style square dance. So it went along good, we had that first big social. And then we'd skate, and the ones that had a little bit of money had skis. We did that in the winter, so we had a good thing going. Boy, life was good. And then, 1941, December, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. I'll never forget it. And they said the next day the principal gets up and says, we're at war. Well, the whole way of life, everything just completely shifted, almost overnight. And that was the end of the dancing and all the fun. And it changed life to this day.
Well, I remember in our school, the Cold War, remember we had drills getting under our desks. And I remember going, what good is that gonna do?
Duck and cover, yes.
Duck and cover, yeah, that was, remember going to school so scared?
I couldn't get over it.
Different world now.
Yeah, it is. The Arms Academy was the.
We have high school stories, but we aren't allowed to share them.
Well, I'll tell you one, to show you how, you couldn't get
You're
away
not
with.
shut off, Maria.
You couldn't get away with anything at Arms Academy like you could Mohawk.
No.
My boyfriend at the time, the first day of hunting was coming, and he wanted to go hunting. So there was if you were caught smoking on the grounds, you had 3 days off. So he said, okay, I'm gonna smoke. So he waited till the teacher came around, he lit up, the teacher caught him. The teachers weren't done. They didn't give him 3 days off, they put him in the dungeon for 3 days. Yeah. You couldn't get away with anything there.
And what was the dungeon?
It was underground, it was like the cellar, like almost like where we had our science class,
Yes.
which was just
Yeah.
foundation. I mean, it was,
So he didn't get to go hunting.
no. No.
Remember, they used to get almost a week off to go hunting when I was in high school. They get time off to go hunting when we were in high school. They just all disappeared.
At Arms
Mohawk,
Academy,
Mohawk.
they weren't,
Yeah, Mohawk.
But at Arms Academy, they would drive in during hunting season, and they had their rifles.
No, yeah.
I mean, they didn't have pickups, but they had them in their car, and they'd get out and they'd show the teachers, and the teachers would be looking at them. Never thought a thing of it.
At Mohawk, they had, I helped lead a protest of a walkout because they wouldn't let students drive a motorcycle
I
to
remember that.
Mohawk. And to probably set a picture for you, our class of 1969 was labeled the worst class to ever go through Mohawk as far as being activist, disruptive, nonconformist. We were almost into the 70s, so a lot of political stuff was happening. And we could protest or do whatever. But what started probably from our class, Elaine and I's, here at Colrain Central, to give you a picture. We're in our 8th grade class, and we're starting to smell something really bad. Like, what is that smell? What is going on? You know, and our lockers were all at the back of the classroom, and the teacher's, she's up front, or was it Mr. Ant? It was one of the ladies, Mrs. Streeter, maybe.
Yeah, it was Gert Streeter. Yeah, when.
So she, now we're like, this is really bad, you know, something is really stinking. And we see her like panic, and she runs to the back of the classroom, opens up the locker, pulls out a leather jacket on fire. Oh, it's because one of our classmates thought he put his cigarette out after recess, and his leather jacket was on fire. And from then on, it just continued sort of that thing all through high school.
And
We never did anything really bad. We were kind of on the edge, but we gave them a run for their money.
Talk about Jerry Gates. He could draw a Corvette like you wouldn't believe. Perfect. You'd think it belonged in a magazine, remember?
Yep.
And Mr. Shea, our art teacher, he'd get after him. Now this time, draw something different, Jerry. Well, it was Easter. You're gonna draw something other than a Corvette. You gotta make it Easter. Well, he did. He drew a beautiful Corvette with a Playboy bunny on the side of it. Remember, Mrs. Streeter was not happy.
Did she teach at Mohawk, Mrs.
No,
Streeter?
No. She claimed we caused her to retire. We drove her to retirement.
She was gone by the time when Sarah and I got there.
Yeah.
But they were great. It was great fun. It was the best. Everybody says
Fun
those
for
were the
us.
best years of your life, but they really truly
Yeah,
were.
they
The whole
were.
living in Colrain, growing up, we're
Yeah.
all still friends from 1st grade on. We're
You know
mostly all still married to our high school sweethearts. 99% of us, my class anyways. It's just an amazing,
You wanna know something
Not me.
I heard?
no,
You wanna know something I heard that was really interesting? I've heard it twice. That people who come into Colrain, that we're snobs. I've had people tell me that twice now.
well, you probably are.
I am not.
Well, if you're not a old timer from
Yeah.
Colrain, you just are a newbie and you'll never be an old timer.
This is the truth, because I grew up here in Colrain, and we moved to Arizona in 1992. So we just moved back in 2016, and that has not changed. You're still a newbie. You
Really?
weren't born here. Yeah, I could tell you a lot of stories, and so. I was voting in Shelburne, and a Shelburne resident said, well, Maria, you'll always be a newbie to Shelburne, because you
Oh,
weren't
okay.
born here. I said, well, I have 8 generations in Colrain. Does that count? Nope, because it's not Shelburne.
Halifax, they said Halifax is the same way. And I said,
So
you're
that-
kidding,
that's just-
because I'm an outsider, but my husband's family was from there, so the connection is there.
No, it's just-
Fine, but other ones, one woman said she's lived there for 25 years and she still doesn't feel like she belongs. And she's worked on the suppers and everything.
Just because the cat had kittens in the oven doesn't make them muffins.
Well, I'd be at the library and I'd always say, be careful who you talk about, because I either went to school with them or they're my relative.
Everyone's related to each other, everyone. Yep.
Well,
Oh, that's our program, I think.
anybody else got anything to add? How about you, Guy? You were still over there?
Nope, I'm gone.
Okay, that's what I thought. Did you go, you went to Shelburne, Buckland, weren't you?
Yep.
Okay.
You went to Mohawk.
Yeah.
The worst thing I ever did was when I was a freshman in high school. And I was in the earth science class down in the dungeon. And it was before the class was started. I think it was right after lunch. We were early getting to class. And these 2 boys, one of them was Peter Slowinski. If you remember Peter, he was
Yes.
the little troublemaker. And the other one was David Dean. And they took my pocketbook and started throwing it back and forth.
Oh,
And I grew up in Shattuckville. I took care of myself. So I watched my pocketbook go back and forth a few times. Finally, I said to David Dean, give me back my pocketbook now. And he threw it to Peter, and I decked him. Knocked him right down.
And that stupid
And
teacher
Mr.
finally woke
Lively,
up
the
at
teacher,
that point.
says, you go to the office. So I marched off to the office.
You say,
Both
can I
of
take
you
my
said-
purse?
said both of you.
No, they gave me my purse. So I went to the office. And Mr. Merritt was the principal.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Merritt.
Spent a lot of time in that office.
So he said, I understand that you just knocked a boy down. And I said, yes, I did, because he wouldn't give me my pocketbook. He said, well, you really can't do that. So why don't you come back at the end of school and we'll talk about it. And I said, okay. Well, the worst thing was my oldest sister was a senior. And she got wind of it. And she was absolutely mortified that I knocked a boy down. And so she gets home before I do, and she tells my mother
Uh-oh.
that,
She can't do that.
yeah,
I
that,
said, you mind your own business.
yeah. So at the end of the day, of course, they announced Debbie Stafford go to the office. Of course, then the whole school knows that I did something. So I get to the office, and Mr. Merritt, I'm waiting to get this terrible punishment. Mr. Merritt says, just don't do that again, okay? I said, all right. And then I found out years later from my father that he and Mr. Merritt had a good laugh over it. And
Oh,
Mr.
yeah,
Merritt
Mr.
told him,
Merritt.
don't worry about her, she can take care of herself.
They
Yeah.
laughed about it.
Yeah, that was the worst thing I
He
ever
said he
did.
had all he could do to keep from laughing, to think
He
that
was a boxing
girl
gold
decked
gloves.
the guy. But he had both of you in there.
Yeah, yeah, no, I
Laid
wasn't,
you both out.
I wasn't, putting up with any crap from any boys.
Did the boys get spoken to?
No,
That's not fair.
no, only me. Only me. But I
Yeah,
didn't
we
get,
used to get sent to the office at Arms Academy, and Merritt was the.
that was where it
Principal.
was. Arms Academy, when I was a
Because
freshman.
we had to have our skirts
Oh,
to
yeah.
our knees, or our dresses, and we'd wear our skirts, and we'd forget to roll them down, and so one of the teachers would see us, you roll the waist up, and then you try to get them down before you get to the principal's office, but he knew anyway.
You know, Debbie, that was a school joke, cause how your sister found out about it was from Fisk.
Yeah,
And Fisk, they had a hired man work from over at the farm.
and he was in the
and he
class.
was in the room when you get, what's his name? And, oh, he thought that was hilarious, so he goes over and tells Fisk.
You were
And
a
he comes
hero.
up and tells me.
Yeah,
That's how I found out about it, John
Yeah.
Fisk told me.
yeah,
I think all Colrain girls have a reputation that we can take care of ourselves. It's always been, kind of been that way.
yeah.
I say, oh, don't buy those girls from Colrain.
No, David Dean and I were friends after. We never discussed it. It never came up, and we just
And
went on.
You left a wide berth with everything.
Yeah, yeah. He never took me on again.
Good for you, Debbie.
Well, what do you think, gang? Anything else from anybody?
Well, I have a question.
What?
I came here from a big city, and I'm a newbie, and I found people, I came with an idea that people in a small town, a farming kind of town, would be maybe a little narrow-minded or unaccepting of outsiders and that kind of thing. And I found, I haven't met everybody in town, but I have found the people that I've met have been very welcoming and friendly, and personally I just, I haven't felt anything negative. And I'm just wondering if maybe that's true of every small town, or if it's maybe special about Colrain. And I'm just wondering what you might think of in your background that would lead people one way or another.
Well, I have a observation about that very thing. And I spent 17 years in jail. Not in jail, but.
You need to clarify that,
Certainly
Joe.
not of us, and we don't brag about it.
So I had a lot to do with the inmates, especially the women.
Oh, that sounds good.
Oh, that's
It's
even
getting
better.
better, it's getting better, okay.
I'll clean up my act here. But I did find out that whatever they have done in their past, they are there to be treated as human beings. And you get back from them how you perceive them.
Oh, yes.
And if you're nice and you're talkative, pretty soon, oh, what can I do for you, Mrs. McQuade? I'll be glad to clean your floors or clean out your car or whatever you wanted. But if you were snooty about it and said, oh, he's just an inmate, I don't bother with him. Well, that's what you got, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So the same goes for people coming into town.
Yeah.
And if you felt offhandish at all about anybody, it was probably them, not you. And for whatever their reasons, you can't always tell.
Well, not only that, but I think, I don't like to clump everybody, like the town people.
Yeah.
It's individual. It's like you can have a bad person in a profession. It's not that whole profession that's
Right.
bad. you know?
No.
So,
When I growing up here and
Debbie,
in this,
Maria's talking, wait a minute, Maria's talking.
let's say probably in this late 60s, 61, 62, a lot of our farms and things were being bought up by people from Connecticut, New York and everything. They were going to be second homes and everything. I personally think that they saved these homes. I think they added value and everything. And we were exposed as a whole town to a lot of people, a lot of different perspectives on things, the people who were coming in. And I know that they were welcomed. And I think that we are a very welcoming, small town community, do anything for anyone. I don't think I ever grew up with judgmental
I don't think so
people.
either.
And I think where it comes from that you'll always be a newbie is the generational issue. That you're 7, 8 generations who've lived here, so everyone's going to be a newbie. I mean, that's just the makeup of the town. The generational, like Betty living in her generational family home. That's common here. So I think it's just I don't know if it's anything to be rude or standoffish. I think it's just, you are new. I also have witnessed in the couple years I've been here, there is some prejudice against, probably I'm gonna label this wealthy people coming in and buying stuff. And I don't think it's a dislike, I think it's more of a fear that they think what's gonna happen to our area. So that's the only thing I picked up on that I thought hasn't changed at all in the 30 years that I was gone. But otherwise, I don't think you'll find better salt of the earth people in any of these small towns than here.
Well, I noticed back a few years ago, and I can't tell you what years, but as newer people would come into town, they'd want to get on this committee and that committee and have changed this and changed that. And the people that lived here for years and years,
Yeah, they don't like change.
they would be up in arms about it because they have managed these situations for years and their parents before that. And along comes these, I'll just call them city people, because a lot of them were.
Yeah.
And they might have had our best interest at heart, but they would get on a board and they'd want to institute a different way of thinking and whatnot, and that was just oil against water, so to speak, for a lot of reasons. So,
Yeah.
And do you realize today at the selectmen's meeting Tuesday night, there's almost 600 seniors, half of the population of Colrain. Half are seniors, and they're baby boomers. And do you realize when we're gone, this will probably be a ghost town. You don't see kids out there anymore or anything, you know? I mean, it's 5, 6 kids with their families, and not now.
yeah. No.
Debbie, the other thing that's unique about Colrain is the visiting nurse. Nursing in general. But Hazel wanted me to substitute for for, so she could have a month's vacation.
This was a town nurse that was paid for by the town.
And
Well,
I wasn't really in a position to take the job on because my family was still young. And as a matter of fact, one month I was pregnant with Sarah, and I said, well, I can't do it, Hazel, I'm pregnant. Oh, you can, yes, you can too. They don't care. All those old folks, they don't care. You can do it. So I ended up and I did it. And then the other time was when I guess I really couldn't do it. I had a lot going, but she wanted me to do it. And oh, I know what it was. The kids were all little. And she wanted me to do it. She said, oh, take the kids with you. They don't care. Take them, give them grand and sit them in the car, leave them sit in the car. So, anyway, I got through it. And of course, you know the technique you're supposed to use, this and that, and the soap and all this and that. And I pull up in front of a house and go, oh, you got your little girls with you today. Come on in and have a cookie. Well, there goes the technique.
protocol.
I quite rapidly forgot the technique. Making a nursing visit. So I said to her one day, she got indoctrinated into Colrain nursing, although she was working for the hospital. And she went on visiting nurse. So she put her foot down. I said, what are you gonna tell him? She said, I'll tell him I'll take any car in town, but I don't want Colrain. I'm not gonna take
Didn't
Colrain.
want anybody you knew.
It was too
And so
hard.
the supervisor did
everybody.
wanted to be a visitor nurse. Well, why don't you go Colrain? I don't want Colrain. She wouldn't tell her what she didn't want it. So anyway, it went along pretty good. And then it come time for vacations. So the supervisor said to Debbie, will you substitute? We've got quite a few cases in Colrain. Will you take substitute? I'd rather have you do it than a different nurse, and then we'll have you, the other nurse, take care of it. Debbie said, I told you right on, I didn't want to take Colrain, and I'm not taking Colrain. Well, she said, I don't know. I think, why can't you make an exception? Well, finally Debbie agreed to do Colrain.
Mistake.
So, the first trip she makes,
Don't say
she
who it
comes
was.
down to the
Don't say who
house,
it was.
and she's crying and crying. What's the matter, Debbie? What happened? Oh, you don't know what happened. You know damn well what happened. And I ain't telling you who I made the visit on either, so don't try to find out. I said, you don't have to tell me. I know, because that woman's sister already told me she's dying, so I know who it is anyway. Well.
Just too close to
And
home.
then the next day it was a man in Ashfield. Oh my God. I said, well, I told you, there's Colrain visiting nurse, and there's Colrain visiting nurse.
And the other thing people would do too, though,
They're
I'll
completely
add,
different.
is they would call you any hours of the day.
Or night,
At
probably.
night, the families would, because you went to school with them, they knew you were their
Yeah.
friend. So there was no boundaries, and they would call you any time of the day. So yeah, it was
It's rough. It really is.
I'd rather take care of people I don't know.
Walking on somebody that's dying that you've
Yeah.
been known all your life and then, whatever.
Well, gang, if you'd like to call it quits, we can do that too. Or we can listen some more, whatever. Or you can have another bite to eat, or some more cider, or whatever. It's out there.
Well, thank you to the
Thank
presenters.
you.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that was fun.